Do we require written accusation before the bishop can issue a godly admonition or even an inhibition based on something he's aware that the clergy person may have done, but we don't have the technical signed and sworn accusation? And then if I could add a sub-question, or two sub-questions. If you don't have a signed accusation, should we invite it from the person who complains so that we're not defending on a technicality? And what do you consider a sworn affidavit? Under the pains and penalties of perjury, or what would be sworn?
To answer the first
That's
question.
a complex question, I object.
The
That's why I get the microphone.
answer to the first question is no.
You don't require?
No, the godly admonition and the inhibition can be used at any time for those reasons stated and set forth, and there's great history within the canons and the use of the canons and the procedures for the canons, for particularly when you could step in before there's about to be scandal of some type or something of that nature, and you do not have to wait for there to be a signed accusation. This the way we have set this up in our canons, that it must be written, it must contain facts, it must be sworn to, and it must be signed. And I would say under the great principle of subsidiarity, that the province will leave that to each individual diocese to determine what that level of sworn to means.
Can I just, the one question, Jeff, was, in the middle was, gosh, I just lost it. There was one in the middle there. Oh, if you don't have a written accusation, but somebody has come to the bishop, or somebody has reported to me to report to the bishop that, hey, this priest has mistreated me, or this priest has abused me, or something like that, is it appropriate to tell that person, well, if you really want us to proceed, we need a written accusation?
I think in some way, at some point, in that first time, you might tell them what the process is. Like, give them a copy and tell them, do you want to think about what this is? But I want you to call me. We care very much about what you've shared. And we take it seriously. And then they need to make a decision. But I think if you have that meeting, you need to let them know that other people may need to become involved at the bishop's discretion for the next meeting. If you're going to have another, and they might decide, I don't want another meeting, I'm just going to do an accusation. But other people may know about these things. Appropriate confidentiality does not mean no one will ever know. Other types of counselors, and there may be a responsibility of the bishop to provide certain types of pastoral care, including suggestion of counseling and other things.
Thanks.
Just on that, I was involved in one case. It was an elderly woman. First, I just want to make a comment, a political comment, particularly when it's sexual abuse. I mean, it's almost, I know as lawyers are going to shoot me, but we're almost reversing the onus now. It's got, and when I was in a situation where there was even a chance that there was anything to this, it was a very minor action. It may have meant nothing, but it was an elderly woman, and she wasn't even prepared. She didn't even want to complain. It was coming from her friends, and we couldn't get anything in writing from her. We didn't want that. Just a point I want to make is that I think sometimes outside of even the canons, often just to protect the good order of the church and reputation, a bishop may have to suspend. They have to take sentence. There actually may like be the Queen of Hearts. And also one of them, there may be preliminary sentence before trial. You know, the reality is these accusations, particularly sexual, I'm particularly concerned about it, and people know about it. In this particular case, most of the parish knew about it. There was just a perception to protect the church and the reputation that there may be a situation where a bishop has to move very, very quickly, initially, and takes suspensory action. Even before he does an admonishment, he may simply say, I'm suspending you temporarily until we look into this. So there's a perception of protection, so we don't get a newspaper story, the local bishop's doing nothing, and then we proceed.
So we did exactly that, and I told the bishop I thought he should do that, but I was wondering if I jumped the gun.
He has that authority in the right case, yes.
I would put multiple exclamation points behind what Mike just said. And there may be a sense in which at times because a vulnerable victim is potentially the one who was harmed, the bishop or the diocese may have to carry that water because that victim can't carry the water. That's not the situation that's being criticized in how other churches have handled it. There the concern is the bishop and the ecclesiastical authorities lined up on the side of just defend the clergy. You're trying to simultaneously do two things: protect the vulnerable and promote a process that leads to truth and ultimately justice. And that's not easy. Let me make something that isn't even directly responsive to the question. It kind of grows out of, I think, Mike's admonition to us. Most of the cases, I've been working with churches for over 25 years now. In my experience, and a lot of that in the area of child abuse, child protection, most of the instances where there is a situation that a church is involved in have not involved abuse by clergy. It's involved clergy doing good pastoring who get a confession from a perpetrator, or more often are giving counsel to a victim or their family. That's a very difficult circumstance to walk through because you want to provide pastoral care. You don't want to force the victim coming to you saying, this happened to me. You don't want to say, you absolutely must report this right now. I'm not going to help you unless you report it. I'm going to go report it. So you have to navigate that very carefully. You have to make sure you're complying with applicable laws. Question, are clergy mandatory reporters? In some states, yes. In some states, no. Question, these are all the slides I didn't get to. Does the clergy privilege relieve you from a reporting obligation? And then question, is the clergy privilege waivable such that you might make a voluntary report because that's what you have to do to protect children? All of those are very difficult, complex questions that have nothing to do with clergy misconduct. Now, when you look at the moment we're living in, I have not just seen clergy attacked and abused, abuse is the wrong word, attacked and criticized in the media and in social media when they have not done anything other than counsel and follow the advice or follow the request of those they were counseling. I've literally seen them sued for that. And for someone who's been harmed, or for someone who's an advocate for those who've been harmed, you may come to a conclusion today that's different than the conclusion you came to at the time of the counseling. I flag all that just to say there is a big, complex, nuanced situation whenever we're dealing with the problem of sexual misconduct, particularly child abuse, but also sexual harassment. You as chancellors are going to be called on for so much wisdom about how do you walk that. And then you're, in some sense, going to be called on for wisdom. How do you communicate about that in a way that is compelling to the church body and compelling beyond? And I'm thinking of one situation I'm dealing with literally as we speak, where the church did everything right. They got a little bit of information that suggested there might be something going on. They pastorally responded to all those involved. It came out that there had been an adult engaging in inappropriate behavior with a minor. The minor was of the age of majority now. They helped the minor make a report to the authorities so that the authorities could respond. So by my analysis, they did everything responsibly. They clearly did everything legally. They are then caught in a crossfire, similar to the one you talked about, Mose, between those who are strong supporters of the family where the victim was a part, who are taking up the concern in a way that the victim is not taking up the concern. Then there are those who are advocates for the person who's accused, and they're taking up that position. And it requires unbelievable pastoral wisdom to walk in the midst of that, hold the church together, and actually move forward with the church. So I flag that just to say, you all, it can get really, really, really interesting and really, really, really challenging. And that takes us, I think, to Mike's admonition, which is echoed throughout. We need to be on our knees regularly asking for God's wisdom about how to deal with these situations. And we need to be praying that the witness of the church and its care for those who may be less powerful and may be victimized, that is advanced in ways that human capability isn't going to get us through.
Let me just say, and I want to be very quick, I realize now, I think I went way over time on what I was supposed to say when I did my little thing, so I'm sorry for that. But one thing that just popped in my mind about the way our process went was that Bishop Lamar also used godly admonition. One of the accusers was on staff at the church, was a clergy person at the church. And he used godly admonition to tell that person, you need to stay away from the church. As well as, because he felt in his wisdom, and as he understood the situation, he was on the ground there, that not only did the accused have to be away from the church, but this person needed to be away, at least temporarily. So it was kind of an interesting twist there to use that tool in order to try to diffuse what was a really, really growing into a toxic situation and trying to, so I may be revealing something that is, and you're going, oh my gosh, no, don't tell me he did that, but he did, and it turned out to be a correct move in the way everything ultimately resolved, and for the good of the accuser, that particular accuser. So I thought I'd throw that in there.
One last question on, so what happens with a godly admonition in terms of the record that's kept by the diocese?